All right, so now this problem we're going to evaluate the inverse sine of negative 1/2. Before I do that, I just want to make clear on some notation. The inverse sine, x, can also be written like this, arc sine. These mean the same thing. So in other words, instead of writing this, I could have said evaluate arc sine of negative 1/2. These two mean the same thing. They're just different notations. All right. So to evaluate this, let's just go back to the definition. Well, whatever this is, the answer to that is y. The inverse sine of negative 1/2 is y. So let's just write this as y equals the inverse sine of negative 1/2. We could jump to here, but let's do what I did in the earlier video. Remember, you can do anything to both sides of an equation as long as you do it to both sides. Let's take the sine of both sides. So I get the sine of y equals the sine of the inverse sine of negative 1/2. Well, why did I do that? Because like by the nature of inverse functions, f of f inverse, they kind of cancel each other, and you're just left with negative 1/2. Yeah, that's our x value. X is negative 1/2. And we're left with negative 1/2 equals the sine of y. So now what is y equal to? Well, keep in mind our answer has to be between negative 90 and positive 90. So in other words, it's got negative 90 is down here, positive 90 is up here. Our angle is either in the fourth quadrant or the first quadrant. Well, all of our trig functions are positive in the first quadrant. In order to get a negative answer, it's got to be in the fourth quadrant. Well, sine, let's call this angle y. The sine of y, by definition of sine, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. And this is our 1, 2, square root of 3 triangle. Yeah? Opposite 1 is 30 degrees. So we know y here is 30 degrees. Yeah? That's that angle. And again, keep in mind, when we're below the x-axis, these are negative y values, so we kind of think of that one as a negative. This is a positive x value, so that's positive. But that's why we get a negative answer. The sine of this angle is negative 1/2. So that angle is 30 degrees, but what is the actual angle? When we go from here down, the answer is negative 30, because we're going down instead of up. So the answer here, this is equal to y. And y, as we just said, this angle is actually negative 30 degrees. Our reference angle is 30 degrees, but the angle we want to report is negative 30. Negative 30 is between negative 90 and 90, so yeah, that is the answer.